something that we haven't observed in China in the decades before, and we know that this movement hasn't stopped. So yes, sport can be an element of national pride. We are all French here, and I'm sure we are all very satisfied by the fact that we did win the last FIFA World Cup, right? And of course, who wouldn't? But that said, what sort of pride do you get from being the organizer of major events, and how long it lasts? And in order to examine that, and I won't take too long, I would like to focus on what memory do we have of the competitions where we particularly succeeded in major events such as the Olympic Games or the Asian Games. I know that Indonesia got a lot of gold medals in the last Asian Games. I also know that if I was asking all of you to name the different sports where you got the gold medal, it will be a little bit difficult. And if I ask you this question in 6 months, you will be incapable of answering this question. Possible. But if I search a little bit, I would be capable of telling you how many medals we gathered. And I think this is a concerning evolution of the representation we have of major events. For instance, when France won the last FIFA World Cup, it was more about the fact that we had a second star on our jersey. Look, we double our trophy. We have 2 stars now instead of 1. And I find it very interesting. Somehow it matters more than the interest you have in the sport. It matters more than the beauty of the sport. Only the result matters. Which are, as a matter of fact, the one where China will succeed. The problem at the world level is that we can take the direction of organizing such events in order to contain everybody. We put more disciplines. We put disciplines where we know that some countries that do not succeed in other circumstances will get medals, and at the end everybody is happy, everybody is proud, and everybody feels like they're on the top of the world. But unfortunately, that means that we will not be looking at the same event. I know that if I come here in Indonesia during the Olympic Games, I will watch television with you, and I will be like, hey, where is this sport? How about judo? The globalization of such events and the possibility to contain everybody, but for what purpose exactly? And again, does it really serve soft power? If we develop soft power separately from each other without any interconnection, what is the gain? What is the results apart serving domestic agendas? So this is where I would like to raise my critical point of view to the nature or the relation between sport and soft power. We really fit in all these different goals. I have personally some particular doubts about it, so I hope I was not too critical for you, and I would be very happy to answer some Q&As. Thank you very much.
We have two International and one of the US NGO.
Support. You have mentioned Hamburg. There was also Stockholm, if I'm correct, in the case of the Winter Olympics, and Boston, which is also a relevant example. So we have examples of cities that decided to consult the public opinion, but it didn't work, and therefore they decided to withdraw. But neither Paris, nor Los Angeles, nor some other cities actually gained support when it comes to this organization. And I'm not sure that Qatar was in a position of organizing such a referendum or any sort of consultation prior to applying for the organization of the Football World Cup. So what I mean here is that it's not just a specific case, but it's a general situation. And of course, I understand that with your question, you sort of point out the situation for other potential candidates, and Jakarta is of course one of them. So my point or my suggestion here is just think twice. Yes, it's great. It's certainly great for prestige. And to be honest with you, I like Indonesia very much, and I would love Indonesia to be in charge of organizing such an event, because I think that it could benefit a lot. Is it really something that is indeed including in this political project, or is it something that we will sell to the decision makers, and we will sell to the public opinion in order to make it happen, but in reality, it's not really occurring so much. So this is where I'm just asking you to be a little bit cautious about the relevancy of such events. Is it really something that matters as much as the cost and the sacrifice, the support of this organization? Is to create sometimes a lot of tensions. And for instance, we know that one of the consequences of the frictions between China and South Korea back in 2017, last year, prior to this election of Moon Jae-in and the dialogue with North Korea, the situation was not very good between the two countries. And what did China do? They decided not to import any cultural product from South Korea. They basically interfered the soft power of South Korea, so to speak. I'm sure that you listen to K-pop and watch some Hallyu TV series, so you know what I'm talking about. China decided not to import these products as a retortion against the South Korean government. So what I mean here is that soft power is, unfortunately, perhaps inevitably used for political means. So on one side, you have the reality of appearing in the world with some label, with some capacities, and also with this power of attraction, seduction, but also the reality, which is the political use of it, either if you promote your country and its soft power, or if you use it as a retortion against the others. So you see, my point is more like soft power is important, soft power matters, but it always reaches the reality of politicians, and it is therefore something that tends to become harder than we usually think of.
Organizing or holding a major sport event, we're just not talking about the infrastructure, about the arena, but it's also important about the athletes. Perhaps in many developing countries, such as in Indonesia, we don't have good athletes. For example, millions of Indonesians love football, but we can beat little countries such as Singapore in a football match. I think we don't have a good educational aspect to give to the athletes to be a more professional or to be a good athletes. In your opinion, do Indonesia or developing countries need to providing sports industry more professional, or maybe in educational aspect we have to build, for example, like sports university to create or educating the people from the grassroots to be a professional athlete. Thank you.
I think it's very important what you describe, and this dichotomy between elite sport, professional sport, and recreational sport, which, as you may have seen in my presentation, brings about social or any other benefits. And something which I've found in an Indonesian context, but it doesn't only apply here, is that this tendency sometimes to, if we talk about football and football academies, to consider this specific structure as the one where you will hopefully identify the new Ronaldo, the new Messi, is I can see why it is appealing to all of us who love football, because you want your country to win the World Cup, etc. But it should certainly not be done at the expenses of just providing physical education in schools, for instance, or giving a chance for kids to just be able to go out there and kick a ball. So I think it's It's very important to bear in mind that sport is not just about the elite, and that there is also a very important social dimensions which can be extracted from sport. And just last word on the infrastructure, which is very much the tangible gains of hosting a mega sporting event. I mean, a stadium by definition is tangible, and that's going to be out there. But I think it's equally important to consider the intangible aspect, which can take the form of national pride in hosting an event, but also in terms of, on the part of the organizing committee, in cooperation with the decision makers, of course, to also instill changes and positive behavioral changes amongst the population, and by sensitizing maybe communities about living healthy lives, thinking about the waste management impact, the plastic and all of that. I mean, these are sort of important messages, educational messages, which can also be conveyed in the framework of hosting those sports. So tangible, intangible, equally important, elite, grassroots. I mean, that would be my message.
This is, to my concern, the opposite of it, is that we took kids from a very early age based on their physical abilities, and we didn't really gave them a choice about what sort of sport they would be doing. And unfortunately, at the end, you have some athletes who are not particularly fond of their sport. They just do it because they were trained to do so. So yes, they get amazing results because from the very early age, they've been doing it. But is it really the philosophy of sports when it comes to, again, trying to reach not peace, but a peaceful society, a society at peace with its activities and somehow contented of what they do? You see, this is where I have some concerns. So yes, developing the infrastructures can be a benefit from organizing major events, can be also the benefit of relevant and smart decisions made by the politicians. So yes, we know the benefits of it. But again, what for? Is it to somehow serve the needs of every different person within a society, and their needs can be their will to practice some particular sports, and therefore promote all sports in general, or is it just to gain some results in major events, and therefore compete in some sports without any particular interest for it, but the gold medal at the end of the day? That's my point here.
Is question mark sustainability and not a full circular economy. From Mr. Red, I think power and
if you're better than me, I will always remember that and say, oh, I have to copy him in order to be better next time. This is soft power. But when it comes to making political decisions associated with both the organization of events, with all that implies, but also the training of some future generations of great athletes in a sport, not based on the interest for the sport, but based on the possibility to reach great results, I don't call it soft power. You see, this is the difference. So yes, sport is soft power. Sport competitions, unfortunately, in some cases, are not manifestations of soft power.
It will be the last words of the night. As representative of Institut Français Indonesia, I want to thank our
and I just want to give response to Mr. Arnold's presentations. Maybe Unipapua is one of the example that what we do in Indonesia has touched so many areas of the SDGs goals, because Unipapua as a social football movement and now has so many programs, including for the tolerance, the health, tackling health problems, the campaign for HIV/AIDS, and so many problems. And it starts from the grassroots. Yeah, and talking about the disaster relief, we just come back from Lombok, and we do disaster relief for children over there, trauma healing with the football. And we are very happy that we are given balls a few years ago from the One World Play projects, and it helps so many children in disaster area to play football because they have special balls that can be played on any terrain like sands or rocky or sands or anything. And our last good news came from Palu, but we still don't go there because we have to make sure that the community there is settled. But we work with the Rotary International and the one of the U.S. NGOs called XGI Pathfinder, and they were very surprised because we know that Americans do not play soccer. Yeah, they only play the American football, but they're very surprised because when they do playing with the children, and they ask the children, "What are you going to play with us?" So the children ask, "Yeah, we want football."
Questions to Arno. Since you mentioned about the use of sports, it's related with the physical activity. In ASEAN context, there has been a rapid technological changes about the idea of having e-sports, electronic sports, and there has been a debate whether the e-sports is considered really sports. But then the countries in ASEAN are still considering, due to the fact that it contributes to the economic contributions to the countries. So how do you see sports as a how do you say? How do you see sports is actually part of it really is a sport, and whether the esports can contribute to the physical activity as well as to the peace in the regions. And my second question is to Mr. Carbo. Thank you for bringing the fact that you were saying clearly that
probably gonna, considering the level of technology, that's probably gonna stay. But actually, I did not anticipate that you would link it to disabled, and I think it's a very interesting, actually, very interesting linkage you're making here. I haven't thought about it myself. When it comes to inclusiveness of recreational or spaces or a playground, I was thinking about much more concrete and down to earth sort of equipment, which would allow somebody in a wheelchair actually to get access to to where he wants to go to do whatever activity he or she can do. But actually, I don't necessarily have something to respond, except that I think it's very interesting. I would simply have this word of caution when it comes to discipline which require more than just a ball or something which anybody can easily find. E-sport by definition is going to rely heavily on technological equipment, which not all countries or not all individuals are going to be able to access. So then you may end up in those sort of situations where you've got sport for wealthy, those who can afford it, and those who and sport for everybody else. So that's just just thoughts actually from the top of my head. I don't know if e-sport actually.